Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, here to talk a little bit about Microsoft Loop, a 101 of sorts, and to tee up some fresh audio, an audio segment with 4 Loop product makers, Patrick Gann, Manon Knoertzer, Derek Liddell, and Dan Costenaro. On today's episode, you are going to hear from Patrick, Manon, Derek, and Dan as they take and answer a ton of audience questions taken from a recent Ask Microsoft Anything, an AMA. And it was an AMA all about Microsoft Loop. They covered a lot. They covered things around governance, permissions inheritance, AI, what they're doing with Copilot, integrations with Planner and Microsoft Teams, where and how pages are stored, and a lot more. It is a big segment. It's nearly 80 minutes of Q&A, plus tips and tricks along the way so you can learn what they like about the product and how they use it. And I guarantee it is very worth it, very worth your listen. Even if you listen to this longer than normal Intrazone episode, maybe split across your morning and afternoon commute, or simply plan for a longer step count walk listening to this one. The whole entire thing, you might get a couple miles in. Before the AMA audio starts, I wanted to take the opportunity to ensure that the following question does not throw you for a loop. And that question is, what is Microsoft Loop? So I've gathered together a few things to answer the question so that you know when you hear all these Q&A answers, you have a really great foundational element in your head that answers that question. What is Microsoft Loop? The Loop app is the home for all of your Loop workspaces across projects and for your components, Loop components, regardless of where they've been shared. This helps you keep your projects and collaboration and the people you're working with all in one place so that you can stay organized. To break it down, the foundational elements, the 3 elements of the Loop app, are Loop components, Loop pages, and Loop workspaces. Starting with Loop components, these are portable pieces of content that are always up to date and in sync across all the places that they are shared, in the Loop app or in other Microsoft 365 apps and services. This allows you and your collaborators to complete your tasks wherever you prefer to work, in chat, in email, within a document, or within your team meetings. You can stay in sync and, of course, on track with Loop components. Now let's go up a level. Loop pages. These are flexible canvases where you can gather items like links, files, images, other Loop components, multiple components on the same page, or different pieces of data in ways that suit your specific project needs. Loop pages can start small and grow as you match the size of your ideas, and you can just keep adding different Loop components by using the ever-present /. You'll hear that a little bit in the AMA. It is a very powerful part of Loop, by typing the /. The last main component is really the breadth of what it is that you'll work in, and those are Loop workspaces. These are shared spaces that allow you and your team to see and group everything important to your project, making it easy for you to catch up on what everyone is working on and track progress towards your shared goals. Workspaces help you organize components and pages. So imagine you create Loop components, you gather them in Loop pages, and multiple pages can make up a Loop workspace. You can have multiples of all of these, of course, as you track across multiple projects, across multiple teams. Now, another foundational element to understand what is Microsoft Loop. Microsoft Loop is built on top of SharePoint, OneDrive, and a new part of SharePoint we call SharePoint Embedded, all within Microsoft 365. They're backed by .loop files. This was previously known as the file extension .fluid, which means that most of these capabilities across Loop components, pages, and workspaces can be managed like any other file in your ecosystem. And last, just because the news just came out, I want to add in a timely add-in about the recently announced Copilot Pages, which is effectively Copilot Pages powered by Microsoft Loop. The 101 of a Copilot page is it comes to life within your file's ecosystem, also as a .loop file, And it's a new user-owned SharePoint embedded container where you can have and create your own Copilot pages. These are dynamic, these are persistent like a canvas where you can have Copilot chat designed for multiplayer collaboration. With Pages, you can turn insightful Copilot responses into something durable with a side-by-side page that you can edit, and when you're ready, share it with your team to collaborate. I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can read a lot more about that new item, Copilot Pages, and specifically there's an article with one of our AMA subject matter experts, Dan Costenaro. He published an article called Copilot Pages for IT Admins, September 2024 Update. I'll have a link in the show notes so that you can learn more about how Copilot Pages are .loop files, and I guarantee you Dan's blog articulates everything you'd want to know and learn as an IT admin so that you can best understand how Copilot Pages work and what it means for your organization. All right, let's switch gears and set up the audio that you're about to hear. This is from the recent Loop AMA that we broadcast on the Microsoft Tech community. We had 4 people from the Loop product team. Again, Patrick Gann, Derek Liddell, Dan Costenaro, and Manon Knoertzer. And you're going to hear a lot of great questions and, of course, their answers on governance, permissions inheritance, AI, integrations with Planner and Teams, how pages are stored, and a lot more, including sharing their loopy tips and tricks. It's a great listen. You can learn a lot more about Microsoft Loop, foundational for your own internal conversations, hopefully to unblock some of those things that you also might have been wanting to ask the Loop team. You can hear what's top of mind for others, catch a lot of insight about roadmap items and where the team is focusing next, especially during the AMA. A lot of feedback came in, and you got the reactions from the Loop product team about what people were thinking and how they thought about what people were thinking. So before we jump into the AMA, I've got one very last item to highlight, and it's very timely. It is a new webinar that we are producing with the Microsoft Loop team that is designed for cloud admins. It's titled Microsoft Loop IT Governance and Management Controls. This is on September 26th at 9 a.m. in the Pacific time zone, and you guessed it, that's tomorrow if you're listening to this episode on day 1, and it will be, of course, available on demand shortly after for the wrap-up, after we wrap up with the live presentation. You can join live on September 26th at 9 a.m. Pacific or watch it on demand shortly after. You can go to aka.ms/msloop/governance. Before, during, and after, it's the same URL so that you can learn about what's coming, watch it live, or watch it on demand. Without further ado, here is the full audio from the Microsoft Loop AMA. First off, we have Patrick. Patrick, you mind introducing who you are, what you do on the Loop team? And I want to get one little thing from each presenter, maybe to start off with, what is your favorite tip or trick when you think about using Loop?
Thanks, Mark. My name is Patrick Gann. I am a principal product manager for the Loop team. And one of the areas I focus on is customer engagement. And so now to your question, what is my favorite Loop tip or trick and such? I find that the summarize feature, where Copilot can take a page and summarize it for you and make it into a TLDR, is my tip. It is a huge time saver, and helps me get through a lot of content quickly and stuff.
So you've got some folks that you've brought along. I'd like to loop another person in, and our next person to loop in is Manon. You mind sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do on the Loop team, and your favorite Loop tip?
Yeah, amazing. Hi, everyone. My name is Manon. I'm a product manager on the Loop team as well. And my favorite Loop feature is actually called attribution. I'm a little bit biased here, but essentially what it does is you can click anywhere that there's content, anywhere that anyone's written anything, and you just click on that and you'll find out who wrote it and when they wrote it. And I find that super useful. I actually really struggle when I'm using a different product and it doesn't have that there, particularly because I want to know if some information is fresh, like was this written last week or was it written last year, as well as like who can I reach out to about this content? So yeah, try that out.
That's excellent. I think a lot of people are going to attribute a lot of your answers to how they answer their own loop questions when people ask them the same thing. Next from the team is Dan. Dan, do you want to hop on? Let us know who you are, what you do on the Loop team, and your favorite Loop tip.
Hello, my name is Dan Costenaro. I'm a product manager, like everyone else who's introduced themselves so far. I like meeting notes. So when you join a meeting in Microsoft Teams, there'll be a notes pane on the right side. You can access it by clicking the button in your U bar on the top. And that gets everybody on the same page. So there's that thing where like, you just want everyone to know the same things, know what the agenda is, know what we're covering this meeting, understand the goals. Loop's right there for you. And then it's a component. So you can just throw it into any chat later and be like, hey, did we follow up on these? Hey, who's following up on this one? And then my second one is just components in general. Like I love that you can take any Loop content and place it in as many places as you need. We call them like portals internally sometimes. Or like, oh, I can put the portal of this one here and here and here and here. And it's taking you all to the same place, but it's meeting you where you are. So
nice. All right. Well, let's use that portal technology and portal Derek on in here. And he'll be one of our Loop components, Loop subject matter experts. Derek, welcome. Little quick intro and your Loop tip.
Yeah, I'm Derek Liddell. I'm a PM also, and I've been back working on Loop for the last 4 years, and I got to build out what was the Loop app. And, I think this was a hard question that I thought about all night. Not really a hard question, but like, how can I have just one? Like Dan, I have a few, right? So I think my favorite feature is workspaces, and just, it's this new evolution of collaboration that we were able to join the journey for M365 a few years ago, and just how it's changed your life from the simple things like somebody put a document in a chat for me and I got to go scroll and find it. Well, not if you have a workspace, because it's always where you put it, allows you to organize it. And so I'd like to start there. And then one that people miss is the slash menu in the canvas. Like it's a totally different way to write, and how you just use that slash menu. Where's my ribbon? Oh, it's the slash menu. And so, and then the unsung hero of it all is just the Fluid framework. People just miss how much power we get from Fluid and what it enabled Loop to go build from components to pages to workspaces. And so I couldn't do just one, Mark. I had to come with three.
I kind of noted Manon started with 1, Dan went for 2, you went for 3. So hopefully to the benefit of the audience, including Patrick, we got more than just 4 tips. But what we're really here to do today is to get to audience questions. They've brought their questions. Some are already in the comments down below. Just so everybody knows, Patrick is going to be the one that's going to go find the right next question and then pose it to his colleagues. And then we're just going to do that for the 90 minutes. So Patrick, we're going to give you just a little break here while we introduce really the breadth of the learning series, hopefully to refresh your memory about what the whole Loop learning series has been, both from the core aspects of working with Loop, moving into how it helps you with project management, what you can do with Copilot, and of course the vision behind it. Those are the 4 parts of what is now the 5th part that you're here for today, which is the AMA. So we're going to run just a quick review that is essentially the trailer for the whole learning series. Patrick, you're off to find the first question, and then we will go from there.
I am so excited to have the people behind the scenes of Microsoft Loop.
I love the Loop app from the aspect that you can start messy and you can just freeform it, or you can make it structured. I can work alone. Loop also does a really good job in bringing people together.
That aha moment is the spark that then encourages someone to say, hey, maybe I could work differently. Maybe I could be more effective. Maybe I could be more efficient.
Yes.
Maybe I could be more creative.
What I'm really a fan of is people being able to get work done. Oh, I understand what this can do for me.
Oh, yeah.
That to me is a magic moment.
And one of the things that we know is that meetings are inefficient.
Stay aligned and focus on what has been accomplished and what's left to do.
Let's see how Copilot can help you and your teammates stay on track and up to date.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we'll get started with the first question posted. And this one is from Christopher, who asks, when can we expect Azure DevOps integration in Loop? And I'm going to send this over to Dan.
Excellent. Christopher, we like Azure DevOps. We use it to build Loop. And right now, we don't have anything to announce about when it will be available for everybody who uses Loop. But we love the excitement. Right now, we're working on features where you can synchronize them as a table into Loop. So you could use the same features you're used to. Anything you edit in Loop, it would reflect back into Azure DevOps. But I'm sorry, I don't have anything to announce today about the timeline.
Thank you, Dan. All right, the next question. So we've got Phil, who asks about, it'd be helpful to learn a little bit more about the recap feature in Loop. And he says his expectation is for this feature to provide a comprehensive list of updates and changes that others have made to the Loop page since the last time I've opened it. So I'm going to toss that one over to Manon.
Yeah, so good. Thank you for that question. The way I read it, I kind of have two answers for you. The first one is around like, what are you expecting? So I'm here kind of representing the Copilot side of the house, and I'm going to use this opportunity to say that you can actually ask Copilot to say like, hey, what all is different? What all has changed? Like, what do I need to catch up on? What's important in this page? So that's something that I'd recommend trying out. And then the recap feature itself really is, you were asking about, like what's the purpose of it? Where it originated from was that we realized that we all tend to leave the context of what we're working on, like the page, et cetera, to maybe a different medium to say, hey, look, I made these changes. This is why I was trying to get this and that across. Like, can you review? Can you let me know? And recap is really a space that's like within your page to say that and to explain like why you made changes. No one else can explain the why better than you can. But we do have like a Copilot add-on to that, which essentially will reduce the amount of work that you need to do to say like, oh, I edited paragraph 5 and I added this, etc. Copilot will just do that for you. And then all you have to say is like, and this is why I did it. Like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And then you bump that over to your team. And so when they open the page, they don't just see the changes that you made, but they also see your reasoning and anything else that you had to add about the changes you wanted to make. So we really think like it helps in that collaboration.
Thank you, Manon. All right, let's see. The next question we have is from Alexei, who asks, OneNote has a capable search that includes OCR and handwriting, but the search capabilities with Loop are limited, especially when using components throughout the M365 ecosystem. So I'm going to toss that over to Dan.
Yes, so search is growing up. I'll tell you how we built it is we are a .loop file in SharePoint. And so we're in the full text index that's available to all of M365 search. So all of the content that you're adding in a Loop component anywhere, no matter where it is part of your search scope and will be used in relevance ranking. We index that by the content that's in there, like headings and all this, so that it can group and hold your search results better for relevance. And then I think the question that you asked is a little bit multifaceted, which is if I'm using if I have an image in there, can I have the text in the image be searchable as well? And of course we could enable that. That's not enabled today yet. And then I think you were asking, comparing it to OneNote, like when I'm searching within different scopes, like I can say, hey, OneNote, I want to search this page, or I want to search this section, or I want to search this notebook, or I want to search across all my notebooks. And we have the ability to address those scopes right now. I'm curious which ones that you would find the most useful. A lot of times when the product team's talking about enabling capabilities, we have so much power that we could put in the user experience. And then if we give you all of it, then people give us the different feedback. It's like, man, search is just so complicated and then insert the thing. And so do you love the OneNote model? Do you love a different model? Do you love the way it works in Outlook? Do you love the way it works in Teams? Like, where do you experience it best today? And throw those in the comments for us. And that could be next on our set of steps to make your search experience in Loop better. And just as a quick follow-up, you can go to any places you can search, like Microsoft365.com. You can find Loop components in your Outlook. You can find Loop components in your Teams chat today, in Teams in general, if it's in chat or if it's in channels. So all of those places do work with Loop Search today. So yeah, tell us what you're hoping for. Tell us your favorite thing and how you want it applied to Loop. We'd love to hear about it.
Thanks, Dan. Actually, Alexei has responded and asked some clarifying questions about this. So his response says, the lines between OneNote and Loop are getting fuzzy. Can you tell us what the strategic vision of each is? For example, meeting notes are done with OneNote and Outlook, but now I have the option for Loop in Teams. So this one I'm going to throw out to any of the three of you who can answer this. So really the question is about like, what's the difference between OneNote and Loop?
Yeah, this is a fun one. So yeah, if you think about where Fluid came from, it was built to make Microsoft more competitive at collaboration. And Loop was the first place we could show that off. And so we built Loop components, pages, to be able to show how high-speed collaboration could be on M365. Over time, you will see this come into all of the apps, but Loop was the first place we could do it. And so that now means we have the opportunity with OneNote to bring in newer experiences to that application, and we are doing that. But we get this question all the time, and I want people to be confident that Loop never sought and will not replace OneNote. OneNote is here, and it paves a lot of people's days. We even know our CEO uses OneNote and needs it. And so it is not our intent to replace OneNote. It is our intent to enhance that experience with new Fluid-like and new Loop-like capabilities. So we always want customers to be ensured that if you use OneNote and you love OneNote, Loop is going to make OneNote better. Now, on the flip side of that, there are things you can do in Loop that you couldn't do in OneNote. Hey, I want to integrate my ADO, like we just asked, or I want to integrate with a third-party system. So we want to allow Loop to innovate in ways that we hadn't before. And so with Loop, you have new ways that we can enhance collaboration because we're a new app with new experiences. And so we want you to be confident that Loop seeks to enhance these other M365 experiences, not replace them. And then on the flip side, we want to push the envelope with Loop and really change the way you collaborate in ways that you haven't done before.
Thank you, Derek. Awesome answer. And so I think we have actually another question from Alexei. Is Loop going to gain a database/lists capability? So I'm thinking, I don't know, Dan, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So Loop, we built, like Derek was saying, the Fluid framework is one of the first things that we had as our technological foundation to build these collaborative experiences with. And we had a lot of research telling us this is where people struggle with working with others today. And we're like, how could we solve these problems? And we have this technology that we could use as a key delivery aspect for it. And we built, as you've seen in the Loop canvas, we built like a text editing surface, and we wanted it to be very simple, very straightforward, easy for anybody to use. That's why Derek mentioned before the slash. Like we thought, let's just make this with no commanding UI for a long time, as long as we can do it. So it just feels so approachable, and it doesn't feel like something you have to learn. We'll have a slash and a search, and people can just edit on this canvas. And then we also spent a lot of time thinking about, well, but what about when people want multiple columns of information and they want structured data and they want to sort things together? And there's a lot of products that already do these things for people today in Microsoft's ecosystem. There's Excel in the M365 suite. There's SharePoint lists that you can do a lot of these structured database things with. You could build something in SQL. You could go old school and use Access for some of these things. And so we wanted to build things into Loop in a way that you could keep doing the things that you needed to do that was in that sort of teleporting scenario. I could put it in a Teams chat. I could put it in a channel. I could also put it in an email, and it's everyone working on the same database. The Loop team does this frequently when we're doing like fiscal year planning for, what features are we going to build next, and what orders are they going, and who's going to work on which piece. And so you've seen us kind of growing this capability slowly over time, that Loop's tables are becoming more and more powerful. And we're reaching towards the like database scenarios, but there's a few things that flip you over the edge of, I really need a super turbo powerful database that stands on its own, and I'd like to synchronize that into Loop, versus I want to start in Loop with a very simple table. And so we're trying to hit the right balance there. The team definitely talks a lot about database scenarios and what's the next set of capabilities we need to add to Loop tables to unlock the things that people think when they're thinking about a database that they really just want to do in Loop. And so asking about database in particular, I'd love for you also, I think I'm asking Alexei to add a lot of stuff in the comments, but what are the things that you think are missing? Like what's a piece when I'm like, I can do almost everything I want to do in Loop, but there's these 3 things that I do somewhere else that I really wish Loop would add, and then I would consider it a full database. So maybe that's a a longer roundabout answer to where we're going and how we think about it.
Thank you, Dan, and also thank you, Alexei, for all the questions on top of questions. Keep them coming. So the next question I've got up is from Mark, who says that he really likes the agenda component on appointments, but most of my appointments are with clients, so its usefulness is kind of limited. What's the current situation around guests using Microsoft Loop? So Derek.
This is a good one. We spent a lot of time in the last year making Loop and Fluid work for guest users. So we're proud to say that you can do that today if your tenant has not configured sensitivity labels. But the really good news is we are on the verge of shipping sensitivity labels for workspaces during this quarter. And once we do that, we will enable guest access for those users who are in tenants that configure sensitivity labels. So this means if you're a small, medium business or an enterprise and you can share a Word doc with a guest user, you'll be able to share a Loop page, whether that be a Loop page from your OneDrive or a Loop page from a workspace. And then additionally, you'll be able to share workspaces with those external email IDs. Now, there is an advanced configuration of 2 M365 tenants that are specially configured for IT admins to have native identity. That will be a forthcoming release, but even until you get there, once we have enabled it for sensitivity labels, even if you're in another tenant, I can just add your email. No IT admin has to get involved, and you can share a page or a workspace with me. So you will see us in the next month ship sensitivity labels. And then on the heels of that, we're going to come and tell you that we're rolling out guest sharing to all tenants, including those who have sensitivity labels. So you are in the quarter for this to happen, and stay tuned over the next few weeks as sensitivity labels gets out, and then guest access for everyone.
And we've got a message center post it's in draft right now. We're like ready to press publish on that one. So watch for it in your message center.
Thank you, Derek and Dan. And there's a couple of great questions that have come up on YouTube. So I'm going to tee it up for Mark to read.
I think when you were talking about lists and comparing with Loop and Excel and all the other good features and tech, Dan, that got a few questions coming. And there's two that are pretty related to lists and I think are a nice follow-on to what you were describing. The first one was coming from Terry Ann. This came from YouTube and was just asking about, is there a plan? And maybe the summary here is, what about loopifying lists? What about connections and integrations with, this may be coming as feedback, but her question, incorporating that lists value as a Loop component, maybe similar to how you've done recently with Planner as a Planner Loop. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Terry, that's a great one. We talk to the SharePoint team and the SharePoint lists team frequently, and we are talking about this. I don't have anything to announce today about capability, but I love your suggestion of, like we did it with Planner, what if it could just plop down onto the page? So, or a component.
Okay, and the other one connected to it, really building on just talking about Loop and lists and the potential, was can you export a Loop or copy it to a Microsoft list? Any thoughts there?
You can't do that today. So we do this internally. We call them Loop hosts. It's like an experience, like a Teams chat or an Outlook email that could host a Loop component. And we have kind of like different rings of where we see those opportunities being the most impactful. And we really sort that based on your feedback. A lot of our research told us that the place people needed structured collaboration the most was in their communications tools. And so you can see that's why we started with Teams and Outlook as our biggest integration opportunities. And then we're going to keep increasing that. You could imagine the original vision around Loop components is I could just draw a box around anything in the Microsoft ecosystem and say, Loop, and then I can take it and put it anywhere else. So you can see us going both ways with that over time. We'd like to be able to take Loop content and integrate it anywhere you want to use it. And we would like all the places where you just wish you could make something a Loop component, draw a box around something. I won't give any examples. I'll let you think of what they are. And then click a button and turn that into a Loop component that could be shared with anybody and actively collaborated on. SharePoint Lists is in that ecosystem. It's in that sphere. We'd love to light up that scenario, but we want to do them in the order that's going to be most impactful for your work. And so feedback on that is like super, super valuable for your team.
Awesome. Well, thank you to Terry Ann and the SharePoint Wizard. SharePoint being this really nice common platform for opportunities for you all to think about and build off of. I'll step out, but thank you, Dan, for addressing that. And thank you, of course, to everybody. Keep those questions coming. There can't be too many questions. We have lots of time. Keep them flowing.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, it's awesome to see all the questions coming in. So the next one is going to be Rob Lyon, who is asking, are there plans to better integrate Loop with Teams, specifically being able to add Loop as a tab within Teams channels? The added Loop tab would also be needed to be tied to the Teams channel. I'm looking at you, Derek.
Yeah, I hope you can see this smile on my face. I think if we turn the clock back a little and remember when components and pages first came out, we said they allow you to work in your app of choice, right? And it was true. You could work in Teams, you could work in Outlook. And then we delivered workspaces that required you to come to the Loop app. But I'm proud to say we're actively, and I say actively working on how we can make workspaces work in your app of choice. And good news is, Rob, we're starting with Teams as the number one place that we can make this true. And we want to bring them to standard channels first and allow you to create workspaces in standard channels where the roster is driven by the existing M365 group that is belonging to the teams and the life cycle. And more importantly, give those channels the power of organization that you get from a Loop workspace. And so this is something that you will see on the roadmap soon. You'll see us writing about it in blogs, but you should definitely keep your eyes and ears open over the next 2 to 3 months, because this is something that us and the Teams folks and our ODSP partners are actively planning so we can unveil to our customers. We hear you loud and clear, and we can confidently say it's coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. All right. The next question comes from Mathieu.
Okay.
Are there any tips for managing comments? Currently, it's challenging to keep track of what's been addressed inside of a Loop component. So, Manon, can you take this one?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks, Patrick. And thank you for asking the question. We actually have a pretty magical solution to this, if I say so myself, through, again, using Copilot on the page, because Copilot is actually, when you're using it in Loop, it's actually grounded on your page. So you could say like, hey, like I had a bunch of comments on paragraph 4, like what happened to those comments? Have they been addressed? Like your exact question. And Copilot is able to reason on those comments. And it can give you like a summary of the comments. You can even say like, hey, redraft this by incorporating the comments into it. So that's all, like we call that kind of grounding. And so it grounds in both your page, the different sections of your page, but also the comments that you've got there. So I really recommend using that if you're trying to keep track of comments.
Thank you, Manon. And thank you, Matthew, for that question. The next one comes from Stephen, who says, we really have an issue with Loop components saved to the OneDrive of the user. We need the ability to move them to a new user, or even better, to a Teams or SharePoint site. Is this planned in the near future? Dan?
So we are in active conversation about this right now. So great timing. Actually, a lot of the things we've been talking about most recently on the team. So Derek just mentioned that ability for you to put content in a Teams team. So like Teams has shared storage, and so it'll have like a SharePoint site with it. We can attach a Loop workspace to it, and then all that content can be, we call it lifetime managed by the group. So as long as the group exists, the content is still there. It doesn't matter if anybody leaves the organization or their OneDrive or whatever disappears. And we're talking now also about how do we do that for scenarios that we don't have shared storage for. And our answer today has been the same answer that the Microsoft ecosystem provides, which is like, let's say you have a Teams chat and you're type, and you go, I need to insert a Loop component here because it would just be more efficient. The rule for where that stuff goes is the same rule of if I had a file on my desktop and I drug it in and dropped it here, where would it get created? And because there's no shared storage, it would go in my OneDrive. And so we just do the same thing for Loop components. And we've started hearing this feedback, which is, but I don't like it there. Like I feel like we're working together, we're sharing something, and shouldn't it be in like a place that feels shared? And so we agree, we'd love for that to happen. And we're trying to think what's the best way for us to make that really easy. Because you don't want to say, oh, sorry, my dog's walking around. You don't want to say, I'm going to put this thing in this chat and then get asked a bunch of questions about what do you want to name it and where would you like to save it and how long should it be there. So we love the simplicity of Loop components today that you just create and you don't think more about it. But we want to get the balance right with that shared storage thing as well, which is like, well, but if this thing is becoming valuable over time, should I move it? Or should I ask the person to do it at the time that they're creating it? Should I build features into Teams or Outlook even, where we would say, whenever you're working with these three people, I've intelligently created a Loop workspace for you to put these in so that you won't lose track of them when someone leaves the organization. And so we're thinking about all those things right now. If any of you have an idea of which model something in SharePoint or in a competitor's product even uses that you would like us to be working on there, we'd love to hear about that. So yeah, thanks for the question. It's very timely.
Thank you, Dan. And I know that we've got something in the works for another webinar about that soon. So awesome. The next question is from Courtney, and she asks, I would love to be able to see my premium plans, aka project for the web planners, in Loop. Is this on the roadmap? It's such an important facet if I'm truly going to be used for collaborative work management in the future. Derek?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, so we have a great partnership with our partners in the Planner organization. Right now, the premium plans is not at the top of the backlog, so we'll make sure, Patrick, that we give them this feedback. We're actually working on some Copilot scenarios that are pretty exciting with the Path folks right now, and that's pretty much the biggest thing we're doing right now. So I think, Patrick, we're going to have to take this one and find out. Like I'm sure we've gotten this feedback before, and just figure out like, okay, once we finish this Copilot work, is this something that we can tackle next? So unfortunately, not top of the roadmap, but feedback taken, and we'll give it to our partners in the Planner organization to see how it will prioritize.
Great. Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Courtney, for that feedback as well. So, next question we have is from Edward, and he's asking: are there any updates to bringing meeting notes to higher education EDU tenants? Dan, this is yours.
Definitely, great question. So yes, meeting notes in EDU. So let me tell you how Microsoft divides that. So we have a segmentation where we have what we call commercial, and we have EDU as a part of our commercial technology stack, and then we have consumer. And so we think of those three as like major places where they have interesting and a lot of times unique needs. Like when we ship a feature to the world, those three segments have unique needs. And so today, as you've noted, meeting notes are available commercially. I did commercial over here. Meeting notes are available commercially, but they're not available to EDU yet. And the reason is EDU for Microsoft, we don't differentiate between higher ed EDU and K through 12 EDU. And our concern was if we turned on the meeting notes feature, and the way it works today is it assumes great actors who work well collaboratively together. Anybody in the meeting can just click and create notes, and anybody in the meeting can participate and add those notes. And you could imagine how that might go in a fourth grade classroom. And so we said, well, first, let's just ship them everywhere in commercial. Sorry, commercial's over here. In commercial, where we know that people generally are being good actors. And then when we get the feature right, which we think we've got it pretty good now, there's some improvements we'd like to have along the lines. And again, please for feedback. If you want any improvements in any of the features, please tell us. We love it. It's super valuable data. And then we want to bring that feature with some controls, maybe that even controls you wouldn't like in the corporate environment, to the classroom environments. And that needs to be able to address both higher ed and EDU. And our thought right now is to do it around meeting role. So like if the person who is in the meeting has an organizer, co-organizer, or even participant role, those are the top three, that you would be able to use the meeting notes feature just as anyone else does. But if you're just an attendee in the role, kind of like think of that for a larger meeting, we were thinking that's what students are often modeled as. then we'd be able to say, no, the students really shouldn't be able to just create in the middle of a classroom scenario meeting notes and sort of on the side type a bunch of things that the educator might not be noticing. And so that's on our backlog. It's something that we've been wanting to bring for quite a while. I don't have anything to announce about the timeline today, but I wanted to give you the full context of why. So it didn't seem random. We were very thoughtful, and we just didn't want chaos in the fourth grade classrooms worldwide. But we want to bring that to EDU soon.
The last thing a fourth grade classroom needs is more chaos.
Yes.
All right. And then I have a question that from Alex. Thank you, Alex, for this one. When creating a table with Copilot in Loop with fields like date, it creates the column as a text format instead of a date format. Are there plans of addressing this type of behavior with Copilot? Manon, can you take this one?
Yeah, of course. Representing Copilot over here. Thank you so much for the feedback. These are all the little things that like we want to keep note of and we want to keep improving and iterating on. I don't have I'm going to use Dan's line here. I don't have an announcement to make around this. But I do want to use this moment to sort of give everyone else that pro tip. Dan and Derek earlier were talking about the /. So when you / and you start typing in date, you just get a little calendar widget and you can click in whatever date. And the really cool thing about it is it will count down to the day or it will count up as in this was 3 days ago, this was 5 days ago. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to you in terms of when are we going to address this? Is it going to automatically put in all the dates? But I do love the feedback and, again, going through and just doing that /. I think this is what you're referring to, the / and then it's a little date pill. That was going to be my second favorite thing about Loop. If I wasn't going to talk about attribution, I didn't know we were allowed to have two. So, so that one is really good. And thank you so much for your feedback.
Thank you, Manon. And thank you. Keep the questions coming. I'm seeing our number of questions keep growing every time I look down and stuff. So it's awesome to see. And thank you, everyone thinking fast on their feet and stuff.
We wanted to make sure that everybody hearing your answers and asking the questions just got a refresher, a reminder of what the product looks like and how it works. You all have put together a great explainer video. Little cheat, it also gives you a second to breathe and sip some water. So for our audience, we want to make sure you see what Loop is all about. If you haven't tried it, there's also a link we're going to put in for you to try Loop. But let's cue up your explainer video so people can see and you guys can take a little break.
Say goodbye to the frustration of jumping between apps and losing track of documents and ideas. Microsoft Loop transforms the way you work, so you can think, plan, and create together like never before. Loop is made up of workspaces, pages, and components. Let's break it down. Create together with shared workspaces for each of your projects. On the Loop homepage, you can access all your existing workspaces and create new ones. In a Loop workspace, you can bring everything you need for your project together in one place. To kick off a workspace, Loop can even do the searching for you, making it easy to add existing project-related information and organize it into pages. Continue adding to your workspace as your project evolves and organize it the way you want. Loop pages are flexible canvases where you can react, comment, and build on each other's ideas. Notifications help you track the things you care about and focus on what matters, all while staying in the flow of your work. Copilot in Loop helps you ideate and co-create. Get inspired with AI-powered contextual suggestions to transform the way you create together. Don't let app barriers slow your project down. Easily share information with people outside your workspace with Loop components. Components are portable pieces of content that stay in sync across all the places they have been shared, no matter where they are updated. You can share components and create new ones, like lists, tables, paragraphs, and more, across your favorite Microsoft 365 apps. You're always in control because it's easy to see where components were shared and who has access. However you work, wherever you work, Loop enables teams to think, plan, and create together like never before.
Thank you for that. And all right, so our next question will be, we got a question from Melissa who says, my experience with the components in Teams meetings is that each component is created separately, but they're not in the same workspace. As a workaround, I create a workspace after the meeting and then move the components to the workspace. Does the feature exist to create the workspace on the fly and have all the components created during a meeting go to that workspace? All right, Manon.
Me, please. Thank you. I love getting the questions where I can say yes. Yes, we do. We are working on this. This is coming out, and we're really excited about it. It's an AI powered feature. So again, I'm the AI, person here, and we're really excited about it. So essentially, we call it Warm Start. What it does is, when you've got a bunch of different files, they could be loop components. They can also be different kinds of files. We do have a way of identifying, hey, these look like they're related to, for example, an ongoing, series of Teams meetings. And these are the people in that Teams meeting. So these are probably the people you want in your workspace, again, to work collaboratively. And then these are the files that look related. Either they're the same topic or they've shown up in the same Teams meeting series. And so then you'll have the team, series owner will see a little intelligent suggestion that will say, hey, you have a bunch of related files here. Do you want to create a workspace? And you just click on that. And then it will list the people who are in your series. You can bump some of them out if you want. You can add other people in. And then you can also, there's a space for you to look at the files that have been suggested, and you can add them or remove them. And then you go right ahead and click yes, and boom, you've got Derek's favorite feature, which is a workspace that you can then organize features around, and it just is a really nice way to keep stuff organized. And we do it all the time. So right now it will suggest it mainly for meeting series, because we've gone on the assumption that that's where you're typically going to have a running project, something that's kind of ongoing, and so that's where we've started it. So yeah, I hope you get to try this out, Melissa, and thank you so much for your question. Thank you for asking a question that that we are excited to say yes to.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always great to be able to kind of, say, hey, it's already out there and stuff. So my next question comes from Mathieu. The ease of copying components in Pages is great, yet it raises the question of how to effectively manage component location awareness and ensure that users are informed where the components are stored, should they need to move or copy them elsewhere. Any thoughts on this? Dan?
Sure. This is a little bit connected to the last question around, can I put things in a shared location? But in general, I think there's sort of two ways to think about how we're designing Loop. The first is, and I mentioned it earlier, we want it to be very simple for the user to be able to just create something wherever they want to without having to ask them a bunch of interview questions about how to manage it over time. And then the other part is we want to make it really straightforward and easy for it to be manageable over time from the user's perspective and from the organization's perspective. And so one way that you can look at this today is if you see a component in a Teams chat, I believe it's almost any place a component appears. I'm thinking about it in my head in Teams chat. There's a little icon in the upper right corner that says, see who has access. You can click that button and you'll be able to see the full list of everybody that SharePoint file, it's a .loop file, has been granted access to. And then if you click in the, let's see, left, yep, it's hard to do this when the video is reversed. When you click on the left side, you can launch that component in the Loop viewer, component viewer and editor, and you can also then see the exact location that it's stored. So you'll be able to see the little breadcrumb of it's in, Derek Liddell's OneDrive, or it's in the team SharePoint site in the customer folder. And so you can discover where the component lives. You just click on it in place and open it in the Loop component viewer editor. And then a feature that we're talking about right now, we would really like the ability for you to be able to rehome those or move them someplace that you think is more appropriate. One of the interesting things about that is shared content and move features are often at odds with each other. It's kind of like if you come home and, somebody finished your sandwich in the fridge or somebody moved it to a different shelf, you don't know which one is true. And so we need to think about that part of the ecosystem as well, of when you move content around, what does that mean for people? And so we haven't built that part yet because we want to make sure we get it right. But you can easily discover who has access. You can discover where it's stored today. And then more feedback on like when people move things around on you in a digital world, how do you feel safe? How do you understand what's been happening? We need to get that right. And we'd love feedback from you on places you've seen it work really well.
Great. Thank you, Dan, for that one. And we are actually, I just looked at the time and we're halfway through the AMA. So it's kind of flowing through at this point. So I know, Mark, you've got something to cut in and stuff like that.
Yeah, there is active discussion on the events page in YouTube. I thought we'd pull one in from YouTube. First was the community supporting the community based on one of our earlier parts of the conversation. This is from Phil. Thought I would just show it in terms of one of the questions about getting information from Loop into List, and it's kind of a solution workaround from Phil, but wanted to highlight that there's always great information coming from the greatest tech in community, which is the Microsoft tech community. But the next question I thought, which would be interesting, I'm not quite sure who this would throw to, so you'll help me on that part. But there was a question asking about adding a backlinks feature between Loop Pages, Workspaces, and maybe even Loop Component. Throw this at you.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, this is another good one. And you mentioned a lot of these are actually on our backlog. We are actually working on this one right now. So when you link a page to another page, we are able to now store a backlink and give you the experience of seeing that. So it hasn't shipped for preview yet, but we are actively working on our ability to give you backlinking experiences. We have a lot of folks that want to use Loop for knowledge bases and other things, and we needed this feature, and it's one of our top customer feedback. So we are actively working on a backlinking capability.
All right, well,
and let me throw down one extra. I've got the Teams chat on the side where our team is watching us, and they're giving us like, "You forgot this," and so one of them is the shared location. So you can see it today in any Loop component. You click I think it's called shared locations, and it's got a little person icon, and you click it, and it'll show you all the places in the M365 ecosystem that our index has found the link to the same Loop component. So like, for example, if you shared it in 3 Teams chats, 1 Teams channel, and 2 separate emails, you would see all 6 of those locations in shared locations. So it's kind of a hidden backlink feature for the component itself. And then I think the backlinks feature in general, like on the canvas, when I see a link, can I see where else all this link has been shared? So both of those we thought about, and the shared locations we've delivered, and the backlinks one, like Derek was saying, we are working on it. It's on our backlog.
Awesome. I will just say on behalf of the audience, whenever you hear a product team at Microsoft talk about the backlog, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because they love to add feedback to a backlog item to say, look, this is what they want. And by the way, they tell us, some refined feature requests, which is always great. So that's why AMAs are great for both questions and feedback. So while we're talking about the backlog, before I hand it back to Patrick, I thought we'd pull one more from YouTube. And I will say this is my secret one that I was going to ask myself if I could squeeze in a personal Mark Cashman question. But in the SharePoint community, I thought this one might come up. So this one came up from SharePoint Wizard, who we had heard from earlier as well. SharePoint Loop, a Loop web part in SharePoint Pages coming alive with loops. You don't have to reveal anything. Take it as feedback, but any comments about integrations with SharePoint or what you're thinking about, where it's on the backlog?
Maybe I'll just say, that's a great idea.
I thought that might be the case. I just wanted to let SharePoint Wizard know your wizardry has now made it into the minds of the Loop product team's backlog. With that, hand it back to Patrick to take us through the next question coming from the tech community.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. So the next one comes from Lloyd, who asks, currently, it can be challenging to see who has access to a Loop page in a workspace and remove permissions easily. Is there any plans to make this easier to manage, even having a shared tab similar to OneDrive where you clearly can see what's been shared? So, Derek, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, so when we originally had the concept of workspaces, we were thinking that, hey, when the workspace is created, we want to make sure everyone has access immediately. You don't have to go request access if you're in the workspace. you have immediate access. And if you get added later, you have immediate access. So we initially biased towards that. But one of the things we realized is that most users are still in the world of sharing pages, right? And sharing workspaces is, unless you're using SharePoint sites for everything you do, sharing workspaces is still a little different motion. So I still think all of the feedback around the shared locations and being able to see who has access applies that we've just answered. But as far as the workspace, removing permissions from the workspace sometimes would be removing a user. And so I think, I have to look at this question in the context of, have we shifted towards workspaces is where we collaborate? And if we're in the workspaces world, yeah, you can remove a user. But I think, Patrick, this is a difficult question to answer, because if you're in the pages world and sharing pages, then the shared locations, the backlinks feature will give you access to see where this is accessed and where it's used. If you're in the workspaces world, you could remove a user from the workspace and remove all their access there. But we don't like to encourage removing access to a workspace unless it's like a security issue or somebody has left the company and you need to make sure they're gone. So I think this is one we're going to have to look at in the context of workspaces. Definitely, you could remove a user from a workspace and they'll lose access. If they have links to pages, they may still be able to review a page, but they can't view the workspace. But that's not a happy path. It's a supported path. But, I think this question is a little challenging to get right exactly without having ability to discuss it a little deeper.
Thank you, Derek, on that one. Yeah, and this is always a challenging question and stuff, and like trying to figure out how to manage permissions is something we hear from a ton of customers. But thank you for that one. The next one I'm going to take is from Chris Ferraro, who asks, is there data on adoption across Microsoft Enterprise customers on Loop? We're interested and concerned about tool overload, so we're curious about understanding how to find out our usage of Loop. So, Dan.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we get it a lot. We don't have anything to share publicly about, like, here's how many gajillions of people are using Loop. Usually we reserve those kinds of share moments for a specific marketing moment. We don't want to try to brag or use a weird number that's hard to interpret. But we do see a lot of widespread adoption of Loop around the world. And then I think the question that you were asking is, can I see it in my enterprise? I just want to know, are people using it in my world right now, and how much are they using it? And you may be aware that there is an M365 admin usage dashboard, and you can go see who's using Excel, who's using Copilot, and all that kind of stuff. And we are aware that Loop is not listed there. It is on one of our backlogs. We are working with a partner team so that we can add Loop into that space as well. So you should be able to see it just like you are able to see, are people using Excel, are people using Word, and that one is coming.
Thank you, Dan, for that one. That has been something that we've got a lot of customers asking, so awesome to hear that. All right, the next question we have is from Matthias, and he asks, when it comes to versioning, is there a plan to let people look at a preview of an older version from a page before restoring? Derek?
Yeah, that definitely is a top customer ask on the versioning. So that is one. It's not in development right now, but we know when you view a Word file, you can actually look at a version, and you don't have to restore to that version to actually preview it. So we will definitely be working on that once we get through the current load. But definitely the crew is excited to build that feature. We know how to do that. We just need to get it at the top of the backlog.
Thank you, Derek. All right, this next one, this one's from Mathieu again. Are there any plans to let us upload our own images to a workspace and such? And so
I can take that one. Yeah. Awesome. That one is not technically hard. There's more of a legal issue on there. What if I upload something to your workspace that's not appropriate? And so we have to be careful initially when we did the cover photo. It's one of our most liked delighters. But when we allow people to upload their own images, we run into security, other copyright issues. And so we've stuck with a known set of images at first, but we definitely have gotten feedback on this one.
Thank you, Derek, on that one. Here's another one I'm going to throw out to all three of you from Lloyd, who asks, are you able to provide an update on what functionality you plan to add to tables, for example? It would be good to save individual features. At the moment, you have to delete if you want a different filter. Any plans to also allow group by column? So this is a question about bringing some more Excel functionality to our tables. So,
yeah, maybe the easiest thing to say here is, like we mentioned before, we see tables growing up to become more and more powerful. And so, I think I mentioned, database was the question that had us talking about this earlier. And there's a bunch of steps along the way towards a full database that would be really useful. Like you said, like multiple groupings, or maybe some different filtering controls, or a better way to interact with the filter controls, and then I think you've listed a few of them there, and I forgot some of them already. We have a lot of features on our tables backlog, and we're actively working on them. I don't have anything to say publicly about here's the 2 or 3 that are coming up next. Typically, I don't know if we mentioned this, but we tend to post on X and on LinkedIn when we're releasing new features. We also post things that are a big set of features, not just like a small improvement here or there. We'll post those on our Microsoft 365 public roadmap. That's what we called it. The Microsoft 365 public roadmap. So you search for that and then search for Loop in there. You'll be able to see some of the bigger things that we're doing there. And so, yeah, I think some of these tables ones, you could imagine we will be doing a roll up in the future of we've just made like 5 or 6 additional changes to tables and look for things there.
Thank you, Dan. Mark, I think you've got something from YouTube.
We had another one that's square in the sights of IT. I think it's a good one, and we'll put it up on screen here. This is from Espen. Will it be possible to control access to workspaces using Microsoft 365 groups? And the important part, in the future.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yes, and yes. I mentioned earlier, we're working on a version of workspaces that can be integrated with Teams. The underlying architecture there is give me a workspace that is owned by an M365 group. And I mentioned that lifecycle and roster will be driven by the group. So if you've invested 2 years in a team that has 200 members and you don't want to add them to a workspace one by one, you can go ahead and create a new workspace with that and reuse that roster. Another flavor of this is, hey, I don't want the team to own the workspace. I just want to give those members access. So you won't get lifecycle, but you will get immediate access if you're a member of the group. And so we call that group as a member of a workspace. So both of those models of workspaces are in active development. And it's like one of the most exciting projects that we are working on right now, because we heard loud and clear that I love workspaces, but I do not want to add a person, 200 people one by one. And so the modern group-based workspaces will give us a model that will satisfy this requirement.
I will just say on behalf of the audience, that is obviously great news. And anything that involves Microsoft 365 groups also answers the question, how do I govern my loops? This governance plan I'm putting together, I want Loop to be in there. So I know you all have thoughts on that. I think that was a great question. Thank you, Espen. Yeah. Patrick, back to you.
All right. Next question comes from Alex, who asks, when using the Loop agenda component in a meeting created in Teams for a recurring meeting, a loop is created for every meeting as opposed to a single loop for the entire series. Is that the intended functionality? So,
yes, great question. I love this question. There's 2 ways we could have done this, and we could have done both, actually. The first way is every meeting gets its own loop component, and that would work the same way for recurring meetings or individual meetings. And the other way we could have done it was individual meetings get their own component, but recurring meetings get a shared one that's used in every instance. And we had a tough choice to make here because we like both. Like we can see how it would be useful for both of them. But it's really hard to give people the second one if you have a shared space for every instance, and then for them to know what to do if they wanted a different one. because they're like, oh, I don't want this one. I want a new one. Where's the new delete, get rid of button? And people will do all kinds of crazy things in the heat of the moment at the beginning of a meeting when they don't want to see the thing they're doing. And so it's hard to get that scenario right. So we started with we'll just always give you a new one every time. You can just start fresh. And then we recently released a feature. You can see your meetings in the Loop app. So if you boot Loop, you'll see on the left side there, our Framework V2 we just recently released. You can see meeting notes. And you can browse to your calendar items that have notes. And if you click on the one you're in, it'll show you all the recurring meeting history. So you can go back last week, 3 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, and pull some content forward if you're like, oh, we didn't finish last week. So let me just quickly pull that forward. And very soon, we're going to make it really easy. So when you click on that meeting note, when it's in Teams, it'll bring you straight to that view where you can see all of the past history of meetings. And so that's how we shipped it first, is you just get a clean slate every time. And then now let me give you a tip. If you want the same content to show up in every meeting, use a component. So you can go into your meeting in your Teams calendar or in your Outlook calendar if you're using it there, and open the form and say edit the series. And what will happen is it will load the meeting note with the series template. And you can just create a component in that series. You can create a component in the series template. And what that means is every new instance, it copies the series template. So it'll copy the link to that component and it'll hydrate right there in place. And you could do like a planner component if you guys want to track your tasks across that feature crew sync in every meeting. You could put a set of, well, actually, that's usually the most common one. But anything that you want to show up in every meeting, just drop a component in there or just drop text in there. And that will repeat in every new meeting that you get to. And so I think we have some more work to do there. We need to make that really easy, but I wanted to give you the tips so you know how to do it today until we make the product feel natural for, no, I just want the same content to show up in this next instance of my recurring meeting. You can get there today.
Thank you, Dan. That is a question that comes up a lot from our customers. So I've got another one from Lloyd. Thank you, Lloyd, for all the questions also. And so he writes, the current challenge I have is building a table of contents and link pages together. Do you have any plans to make organizing pages easier? For example, if you have a parent page with subpages, then on the parent page, it automatically displays a table of contents based on the connected subpages, so you don't have to manually create it. Are there any plans also to make links look prettier or more concise? It's currently it's a long image or very long URL.
Yeah, I think that one feels like feedback that we need to consider. We just released, most people should have it now, a new framework V2 that makes the Loop app feel like it's the home for everything Loop. Meeting notes, you can find everything. However, I think, Patrick, that feedback is very good, but we need to just absorb the feedback and come back and understand how we can do better. Table of contents is there, but obviously there's a few more things that customers are looking for. So I think we just have to listen on that one and give that feedback to the product teams.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd, for that. And it's really great to hear that. Like it also says like, hey, people are using Loop for managing their projects and stuff. So also got some more stuff from YouTube. So Mark, if you want to bring that on.
Yeah, we've got a question from Lars. And before I show it, I just want to let you know, if you want to improve your memory, let me say that one more time. If you want to improve your memory, look at Loop URL, memorize it, and go to a whiteboard and see if you can remember the full URL. It's a great brain training. I'm teasing because I'm from SharePoint land and we've gotten that for years. But any Bitly service planned for Loop URLs? Anyway, this is the question from Lars. And I think it's for maybe a number of you to jump in and just thoughts about how you either can do lifecycle management of a loop or loops, or just how you as a team think about managing through the creation of a loop, managing the loop, archiving it, deleting it, obviously reporting on it might throw that in there. But when you think of lifecycle management from a loop component, how it adheres to maybe the already ways that SharePoint does it, or anything unique to SharePoint that you're to Loop that you're thinking about.
Derek, you want me to take it?
Yeah, Dan, I was thinking either of us can take it. You go ahead and start, and then if there's anything else, I'll chime in.
Why don't you add? Two things. Loop is just a dot loop in SharePoint. And so we ride on the coattails of tons of good work that the SharePoint team has already built around managing lifecycle, inactivity policies, M365 groups, which is a thing that we talked about earlier, which probably wasn't included in the context of this question, but you could imagine if a .loop file was in a Loop workspace associated with an M365 group, it would be lifecycle managed in there, archived in there, deleted as part of that. And so the short answer is we ride on the coattails of a really great system already, and we just need to finish that integration. We need to be part of groups. We need to be part of user-owned workspace content as well, so that when a user leaves an organization, you can say, this was just my personal stuff, and it should disappear when I leave, just like my OneDrive does. It can go to my manager to look through some things if you have a workflow for that as well. And then I think there's a second part to your question too, which I'm not sure if you meant it, but I'm hearing it. Which is, how does the end user think about this? Not just IT, like, where there's piles and piles of stuff and they think, I have to be responsible for this. I have quotas to manage. We have compliance and regulation that says we shouldn't keep things longer than 7 years, but we can't delete them for 3. All those features are available with SharePoint. But from the end user's perspective, like, how should they think about this? Like, hey, I'm done with this workspace. I made it just to get ready for a Friday meeting. We're going to present to some execs, and I needed to put 17 things in one place and pull 4 people together and work really fast. Like, I'm done. Like, now what should I do with it? And so those are features we haven't built yet. Like, maybe, archive my Loop workspace, like from the end user's perspective, or, go put these in the unused section. Or maybe Loop could do that. It could sort them differently and say, places you've worked with heavily in the last 2 weeks, and then places that you've just referenced, and then places you've not looked at. And so those are also things that we're thinking about, but we haven't built those yet. And so, we do think about lifecycle of Loop. We think largely from the admin's perspective, we're going to fit in the system for M365. And we want that to be the answer as much as possible, because we want it to feel familiar, like everything else you're already managing. And then from the user's perspective, we have some more ideas there that are not developed yet.
Cool. Can I add a couple things on? Mark, Dan and I spend every morning talking about these features. Yeah. So one thing on the managing it for IT admins on the call, make sure you check out the SPE Admin Center. When we public previewed and GA'd, it wasn't there. It has now GA'd. And so if you're wondering, how many containers do I have in my tenant? How much storage is it eating up? SPE Admin Center is right inside of SharePoint Admin Center. You have an option for sites. Right under it, you have an option for containers, and that will show you all the Loop containers that we create, and you can look at those. So that's out there now. On the other side, Dan sort of mentioned that there are a couple things that we talk about that we still need to deliver. One of those is a workspace recycle bin. So, one of the challenges you have today is if you delete a workspace, oh no, if you sped through our warning, don't delete this. So we do have near the top of our backlog to come give our customers a workspace recycle bin. You can restore the storage. Soon it will get much better that you can restore the whole workspace as an IT admin. So, there's a customer-facing, user-facing workspace recycle bin, but also IT admins will be able to restore a workspace with just restoring the container. And then another feature that we actively talk about now, and I think we're getting close to prioritizing, is just the ability to move pages. It is a destructive move, meaning that your links will be destroyed if you shared them previously, but that's no different than a Word file in SPO or a Word file or an Excel file in your ODB. We do think we're getting to the point that we need to give you all a move operation so you can safely shut down a workspace and move the content you need to keep to a different workspace. So those are the things. So try SP Admin Center today, and then look forward to Workspace Recycle Bin and Move Pages as they are getting close to us needing to deliver those.
Thanks, Derek. Great question. I've got another one, and this one is from Mathieu. Any new components / building blocks coming soon? He also says he'd love to see a calendar and database, which we did answer earlier. And any plan to integrate a Loop page or workspace for the Teams team, which we did catch earlier. So I think the main question here is what's new coming, what's coming on the components. Manon, do you want to?
Oh, go ahead, Manon. I'm sure she'll talk about one, and I'll have one more. Go ahead, Manon.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like I'm getting all of Mathieu's questions. So, we do get a lot of these, like, what are the coming soon features? And we're here to answer your questions. We're also not here to, like, maybe, like, turn this into a marketing moment that it's not supposed to be. But there is something that is really exciting, and I've been playing with it recently, and I think, Derek, this might be the one you were going to mention, but it is around mermaid diagrams. If you're not familiar with the term mermaid diagram, neither was I, but essentially what it is it's a lot like a flow diagram. It's like a kind of an if and situation. So it'll be, you can have, like, for example, I've been using this for, like, steps in product development, like, what are the different steps and what if there's a fork in the road and what does that look like? And so we do have the capability to both, like, have a space where you can type that up. So it's honestly, it's a very simple kind of way to say it, but also then visualize those mermaid diagrams. So that's kind of a fun one to check out. And then more broadly, I know it feels like no one's got time for this, but it actually is kind of a fun exercise to just go ahead and like hit that / and just browse through all of the existing building blocks, as you called them, or like component types. And, some of them are like second party, third party. Some of them are really just like inbuilt into Loop, and they're kind of, once you get the hang of them and you get used to them, they end up saving a lot of time and just being really powerful. So it feels like just a little bit of an upfront cost. And then, just / it's the place to be. Yes, Derek, did I steal your answer?
No, the mermaids diagrams were life-changing for me. But I also think the mixture of those who have Copilot and the mermaid diagrams were like, I had Copilot take a table in Loop and turn it into a mermaid diagram. And last year I pulled out the rest of my hair trying to produce these charts by hand. And so having Copilot do that on my behalf was just life-changing for that week. And so, yeah, definitely Manon +1 on the mermaid diagrams, and then also using Copilot to help you generate those from a Loop table.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the Copilot bit to that. Just to remind
we've said the word mermaid diagram. Oh, sorry, Manon.
Yeah. I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, it might not be a very common term, but it's essentially like a flow diagram, right? It looks a lot like a flow diagram, and it'll say, from A to B, from B to C, and then C has either, D or E. And so it's kind of just a simple way of saying, like, here's how your flow works. And it is simple enough, but it's even simpler, obviously, when Copilot does it for you. So yeah, Derek, thanks for pointing that out.
Awesome. And I just double checked. If you search mermaid diagram, it's the first thing. It's not a weird thing on result number 12. It's the first thing. So so check it out. They're really powerful, and Copilot can make them for you. You just express your ideas and say, "I'm blah 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 blah. Could you make a mermaid diagram to express that for me?" Yes.
All right, thank you everyone for that one. And so we've got another question from Danea, who asks, we wanted to create an issue tracker template. However, there are a couple of things: the table categories with list of options do not come along. Additionally, we can't delete new entries we add to a category. When will we be able to do this? I think the question is around customizing your own templates. Derek?
Yeah. So Loop supports templates today. You can also save them and reuse them within a workspace. The two things we're yet to deliver on templates is a marketplace. How can I share my productivity template with another tenant? So that's one we have on the backlog. And then workspace templates. And we think that, hey, I have a workspace, let's say, for our newsletter. And how can I make that a template so other organizations in my company can use it? And so, play with the templates we have today, and you can save page templates across a workspace, and multiple people in a workspace can use the same. But please give us more feedback on what you'd like to see with templates, because I'm sure we're going to continue innovating there, and we want to hear more of what you all need to do with templates.
So I've got another question from Alex, who asks, an action item in Loop is added to do. Are there plans for actionable items to be added to planners? So
actually, the way it works in meeting notes and the task list component is it creates a new planner board. And then that planner board is visible in Planner. And then if you mention a specific person, the way the Planner ecosystem works is you'll see all of that stuff in Planner, but then your mentions get rolled up in To Do. So you can go to To Do to see all of the things where you've been mentioned, or you could go to Planner and then browse all of the Planner boards that you're in, and you'll be able to see the task list component that's syncing. It will create an entry on the left side there, and you'll also be able to see all of the meeting notes that created there. So it actually does do it today. So maybe a follow-up question if I got it wrong, and you're like, no, that's not what I meant. But I think we do what you were hoping for today.
All right. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to actually throw one out for all three of you to ask. So this is from something from one of my favorite podcasts. What myth about Loop would you like to bust? So what is a common misconception that people have about Loop that you would like to correct and stuff? So I'll start with Manon.
Pass. Bring me back at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I got one.
Right.
I got one, Patrick. So a lot of people, when they see Microsoft exploring anything new, they always want to ask us, what does it replace and what are you destroying? And I think that's hard from a product team perspective, because we have a bunch of research that says people can't work well together. And there are many ways to bring that experience to the end user. Like there's a lot of features that we could build directly into Word or directly into Outlook or directly into Teams. And sometimes there's integrations that we could build directly into a Teams channel. And then sometimes there's just concepts that no matter how hard Microsoft tries, people are like, reject, close, ignore, bad, evil. And then you bring it up as a different named thing and they're like, love, so cool, can't wait to use more of it. And so we have different ways to explore ideas that we think, maybe Loop eventually evolves into it's the best thing you've ever used in Teams. Or maybe it eventually evolves into it's the place that you work with all of your Copilot content. And then you can use it across the ecosystem. Or maybe you have a vision of what Loop could be. And so a myth that I want to bust is that Microsoft is creating Loop to destroy or replace or ruin or do something to it. There's no conspiracy theory. We're the Loop team. We built it because the research said that people are struggling. We're we have to give them something to solve these really painful problems on working together. And so the myth is we're not trying to replace anything. We're trying to make the world better with Loop. And we're trying to put it in all the places that you're already struggling working with people to see, did we get it right? What could we do better? So,
thank you, Dan. That's an awesome answer. I don't know if Manon or Derek, do you have anything?
I got one.
Oh.
Dan kind of got on the one I was on, but I think the one myth I want to dispel is that, and we heard it from the MVPs and IT admins who were out here a few months ago, that, hey, we don't see Loop on the roadmap. We think Microsoft's going to cancel it. We've seen this happen before. You deliver a 1.0, it's promising, and then you cancel it. And so I want to give folks confidence that the power of Fluid and Loop isn't going anywhere. Like Dan said, you may see it reused in other M365 applications, but that was the intent, right? It might not say Loop when you experience it, but the innovation that we've been building over the last 4 or 5 years is going to withstand time, and it will be here because we were intending to change the way you collaborate. And we're on the way of doing that, but we're going to scale out by bringing these great collaborative experiences to other applications in M365, wherever you are. So I want people to be confident that the innovations we've delivered aren't going anywhere. We can't go backwards to 2010 era collaboration. We want to go to the future, and that future includes Loop, it includes Copilot. And so just be confident that we're not going to let this technology die. We're going to give it to you where you are. So I think that would be the one for me.
And Manon, do you have one now?
Yes. I stalled, but this one's not specific to Loop. It's actually, just what I've learned working at Microsoft for a while. The myth is people don't read feedback. And I see this myth in practice, particularly when we do get pieces of feedback that are they're written the way you would write maybe to a chat bot or to something that doesn't have a soul. But we actually do read the feedback. I mean, this is part of what we're doing here, and it's also just part of what we do in the product. So, the idea that that's the myth I want to bust is like that we don't read feedback. We actually spend a lot of time reading it. And when we talk about our backlog is often informed. It's informed by different things. It's informed by like, what's our vision for this product? What does our research tell us? But also in a really big way, like what are people saying? Like, what are the things that they're struggling with? What are the things that they love? Believe it or not, some people do send us, like the feedback, like, oh, this was so cool. It really made my day. And then that makes our day. And then we can think of like, what are other delighters that we can build into the product? So Loop is built on feedback. That is the truth that I want to remind everyone of.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's true. It's like one of the things I really enjoy about working on the team is the fact that like we get to hear all these stories from customers and like seeing how they use Loop and stuff. I know that Mark's got something else from YouTube. So
we do, but by the nature of what you all were doing, myth busting, I just would like to say and add a sound effect. Busted. I always love it. I love that show. Great question, Patrick, and great answers from all of you. The next one, I'm going to combine two that came in from YouTube. They're relatively the same, or it builds off on itself from the same person. So I'm just going to give you the short synopsis and then love to hear your thoughts around permissions inheritance. And part of the question is when somebody leaves or, joins the team. I think you may have addressed that a little bit earlier, but they're really interested in from the levels of workspaces down to pages, down to components. If you make changes or you establish it at the top, will it inherit all the way down or vice versa? Maybe the state of the landscape as it is today and anything you're thinking of when you're thinking about the groups that we mentioned earlier or some things that you can build on top of SharePoint. But it's that notion of permissions inheritance across your three main areas, workspaces, pages, and the Loop components.
Yeah, this is a great question. It's intuitive when you're looking at it in one place, what it should do, but it's not intuitive when the content lives in multiple places. What you changing in here will do over here. And so for right now, we've embraced every .loop file has its own permissions metaphor. So if it's stored in a loop, so I'll make that two parts. So like if you're in a Teams chat and you create a Loop component, it is a .loop file. It's shared with whoever it's shared with. If I then take that Loop file and I put it in a workspace, and I'm basically just adding content to that workspace, it will be the combination of those two things because it started its life in the chat, and then you added it to the workspace. You can share it with the people that are inside that workspace. And so one of the ways we try to look at this question is, can the user who's looking at the content answer two questions quickly and easily, which is, who can see this content? Can all the people that are right here, can they see this content? And the second question, can anyone who's not here also see this content? And that might be unexpected. And we kind of want to double down on that first and try to make it really easy for you to know. When you start building inheritance features, a lot of automatic things can happen that are unexpected. Like if you took a Loop page and you put it in a Teams meeting note, and then you also shared that in someone's OneNote notebook, and then you also put it in a Teams channel. And so if we did automatic inheritance in all the places, it could be upsetting. If we did it in just one of them, it could be confusing. So we're embracing that file metaphor for now, which is you can look at it as a file, and you can ask it, who in this current place that I'm looking at can see this, and who in this current place that I'm looking at can't, or who in this current place that I'm looking at could see it that I didn't expect. And that's kind of how we think about it.
And Dan, one other thing, I'm looking at the chat. Lloyd clarified an earlier question about knowing where pages are shared. And it was good clarification because what he was actually looking for was, I created a workspace. It has 5 pages. Each of these pages are shared. Give me a view that tells me across my workspace, these two are shared to this group. And so thank you for that clarification, Lloyd, because yes, we don't have that in our shared locations control today. That only shows you one point at a time. I do think within a workspace, we can imagine a view like that, but then imagine how complicated it gets in those scenarios where this page is linked in my workspace, but lives somewhere else. And so it does become challenging. But Lloyd, thank you for that clarification on how we could say within a workspace, where are all these pages shared, and we can go envision with design how we could give you that view. So thanks for that clarification.
Thank you, Derek, for that one.
Yeah.
And we have one follow-up question from Alex. He was asking about his question about syncing to Planner was actually more specifically, he wanted to know if you could add a task to an existing Planner board in Planner. I don't know.
We hear
Dan,
this
you want to
one.
take that one?
This is a good note to end on because it's kind of the theme I hope you've been hearing, which is that's great feedback. You cannot do that today yet. It is on our backlog for you to be able to be more specific when you create a task list component and say, I would like it to pull in from this place or synchronize to this existing place that I'm already working. We don't have that capability today. So thanks for asking. That one is one that comes up fairly frequently, especially from the meeting notes scenario. And then here's a workaround for you. Something that you can do today is if you have a specific place that you want to do tracking of tasks in Planner, you can just copy the URL bar, put it on your clipboard and paste it into any Loop page, and it will unfurl as a Loop component right there in place. So you can get the Planner board that you want in Loop just by copying it from its source, the URL.
Excellent. Excellent. I thought just so that we had one last thought from each of you, imagine we've just descended a very tall building and we're in the elevator, the doors are opening, and you've got that one more thing that you want to say. I'm going to say the obvious one. Try Loop today, loop.cloud.microsoft. Patrick, the doors are opening, the elevator's just dinged onto our floor. What do you say to our audience about Loop?
Use Loop. You can use Loop anywhere. It's meeting notes, for example. We have a template that can be used in your, not just your Teams meetings, but Zoom meetings, etc. So, it's not just locked in or in Teams only. So that's my tip before we go.
All right. Patrick is out of the elevator. You can see him with his backpack turning to the right. Manon, you're about to hop out. What do you say to that person about Loop?
I would say that Loop is really cool for bridging the gap between communication and collaboration because you can have it in your communication tools. Think Outlook and Teams, where it's kind of ephemeral. It's I've got something to tell you real quick, and then collaboration, which is more your your documents or your files or your things that you're kind of keeping over time. And I just find that Loop is this really fun in between. You can have it in your chat, but then it can live on and become a much bigger thing that you keep referring back to over time. That's kind of my little this is why I love Loop. This is part of why I work here.
Awesome. All right, the doors, I have to keep them open. Dan, quick, what's your last thought for the audience on Loop?
Yeah, I think it's the feedback is clutch. Building this product with your feedback is so much better. And so in the top right of any Loop experience, there's a little gear. Click it. There's a help and feedback button, and then there's the give feedback. It's got a little smiley face, so it's easy to see. Circle, happy thing. Click that thing. Put all kinds of stuff in there. You could write a little mini book. You could put a URL to a Reddit page. You're already talking about it, but we love your feedback and we use it to build a product.
Derek, the elevator is empty, but still there is value for this door before it shuts.
Yeah, the one thing I'm screaming is wait till you see what we do next. And if you're not using Loop today, please let us know why.
Awesome. Well, this has been a busy 90 minutes. We want to remind everybody that there is an entire Loop learning series. It's a 5-part series. This is part 5. If you were attending us live, thank you very much. If you have any want or desire to learn a ton about Loop, the Loop team has put together this great 5-part learning series covering everything, the core aspects, project management, Copilot, looking into the vision of how they build and design the product, and of course, all the questions that you asked today. So thank you to the team for providing all the great content and for being brave enough to be on the hot seat for 90 minutes. Thank you for doing all the work that you're doing in the design of the product, listening to feedback, incorporating that, and making the product better day after day, week after week, month after month. And last, a thank you to our audience for joining us today and always being vocal about what you like, what you'd like us to think about a little bit harder, and of course, using the product and giving us that direct feedback. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and go Loop, go.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
So maybe you have just finished your second commute, or you're at the tail end of a fairly long walk if you've been listening to this episode in its entirety in one go, which means you've just finished listening to the Microsoft AMA, and we're at the tail end where I want to share with you some upcoming events that are very recent and relevant. Some of them are pretty new and fresh, so I want to highlight some of the new events and webinars and wrap in with some of the ones that are upcoming that are the larger events that you may have already heard of. So let's start with September 26, 9 a.m. Again, the Microsoft Loop IT Governance and Management Controls. Just go to aka.ms/msloop/governance to learn more, to join in live, and of course to watch on demand if you didn't quite catch it in time. On October 2nd at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, we have a webinar called The Development Spectrum of Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. This is with 3 subject matter experts, April Dunnam, Vesa Juvonen, and Chris Kent, to walk you through the full spectrum of no-code, low-code to pro-code, and yours truly is going to be the MC on that episode. So October 2nd, 9 a.m., learn a lot about the opportunities across the development spectrum. On October 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time Zone, it's a big event for the Microsoft OneDrive team, and they've titled this AI Innovations for a New Era of Work and Home. You can find out a lot more about this, watch it live, watch it on demand at aka.ms/OneDrive Event 2024. It's a big one. It's a big reveal moment for the team, and I think you'll be really excited. If you have any inkling to want to know what's coming next for OneDrive, that is the one to tune in, October 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific. Now, the next one is a week-long event, October 14th through the 18th, each day a new webinar. This is put on by our event partner team, ESPC. They are running SharePoint Week, and it's all online. This is 7 webinars with 7 subject matter experts, and you can expect insights, best practices, and innovative solutions that will help you thrive and streamline your collaboration to improve data management, unlock new capabilities, a lot in the context of learning what it is that SharePoint is these days, specifically around 7 great topics with 7 great speakers. So don't miss it. ESPC, October 14th through the 18th, an online SharePoint Week. Next, October 16th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, we have a great special treat that we've been managing through a couple of different episodes. This is our Meet the Makers series. And the next one is focused on create and share Copilot agents in SharePoint in a few clicks. That is Caruana Gatimu talking with CJ Tan, who is leading up that effort. This was a recent announcement from the big Wave 2 announcements with Satya and Jared. And specifically, this is to break out a lot more information for you to learn about how you, in the future, will be able to create and share Copilot agents in SharePoint. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to experience. And it's really great to know that soon you will have this click to Copilot experience in SharePoint. So get ahead of the curve and join us on October 16th to learn more behind the design of it and, of course, to see it in action. All right, there are also a few upcoming larger events. There is Collab Days New England. That's on October 18th in Burlington, Massachusetts. It's a one-day event on Friday. And there's a great pre-event blog that we have from event leads Mark Anderson and Julie Turner. I'll have a link in the show notes, or you can find that at the Community News Desk blog that we manage. Next is TechCon 365 Dallas. This is November 11th through the 15th. In, you guessed it, Dallas, Texas. Yours truly is going to help kick off the event with a number of MVPs, Martina Grom and Emily Mancini, along with my colleague, Josh Laprati. We're going to kick it off and then join everybody with a lot of great content, a lot of great speakers, of course, a lot of great ancillary events, workshops, the expo hall floor, you name it. It's going to be in Dallas, November 11th through the 15th, the next city for TechCon 365. And the last two are relatively big, so I bet you've already heard about them. Microsoft Ignite, yes, it is now available to register. That's in person in Chicago and online for the world, as many people who want to tune in. That is November 18th through the 22nd. Save the date now, register it, learn more about it, share it with all your peers, your colleagues, your partners, your clients, whomever. Microsoft Ignite, big moment for us to share a lot across the entirety of the company of what is coming next. And last is ESPC 24. This is in Stockholm, Sweden. This used to be titled the European SharePoint Conference. They've just shortened it so that you can get less out of breath like I am doing right now. So it's just ESPC, December 2nd through the 5th in Stockholm, Sweden. A great keynote planned from Jeff Teeper. A lot of great information coming from Microsoft, who will be there in droves. We've got a lot of people going to that show. Of course, Microsoft MVPs and community leads across a lot of content, breakout sessions, lightning talks, expo hall activity, workshops, and of course, there is a closing keynote for Microsoft with my manager, Caruana Gatimu. Now, with all these webinars and events, there's one place you can always go to check what is going on. It's a great resource managed by the community for the community. We also put in some of our content there because it's just a great location to review and share anything around events that you want to visit. It is called communitydays.org. You can go to this website and find your next event. I want to thank our guests, the Loop team, Patrick Gann, Derek Liddell, Dan Costenaro, and Manon Knoertzer for being on the AMA originally, on the show here to further share their responses and looped up insights, and for making a great new collaborative app in Microsoft 365. If you haven't tried Microsoft Loop, give it a try. If you haven't tried some of the things that you heard today, go give it a try right now. The best way to get to Microsoft Loop is to type in loop.cloud.microsoft, hit return, and start getting loopy. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to all that was discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone. You can also send us your questions and feedback for the SharePoint team, for the Loop team, for any team that we talk to. You can send us your feedback and your questions to theintrozone@microsoft.com, or find us on Twitter @SharePoint, @MicrosoftLoop, @MCashman, and @CMcNulty2000. Remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. Follow the show wherever you get your favorite tech podcasts. Thank you for listening. I'm Mark Cashman, and this has been The Introzone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Loopified Intelligent Intranet.